Listen, I want to ask you something straightforward. When was the last time you actually sat down with your cholesterol numbers? Not just heard you're borderline from a doctor and walked out with a prescription, but genuinely understood what those numbers mean for your heart, your arteries, and the next 20 years of your life. Because here is what most men over 45 do not realize. LDL cholesterol, the so-called bad kind, does not hurt you dramatically. It does not give you a warning sign, a chest pain, a moment where you say, okay, something is wrong. It quietly, steadily deposits inside your arterial walls for years, sometimes for a decade before anything shows up on a scan. And the frustrating part? You can feel completely fine. Energy decent, no obvious symptoms, nothing alarming at your annual checkup except that one number creeping higher year after year. Now imagine this. 8 weeks from today, you go back for a blood test. Your doctor looks at the results and says, "What exactly have you been doing?" Your LDL has dropped 20, maybe 30 points without a single prescription. That is not a fantasy. That is what consistent, targeted lifestyle change can achieve for most men in your position. And today, I'm going to give you exactly 9 evidence-based strategies to get there. But I need you to stay into the second half of this video, because I'm going to name 2 supplements that millions of people are taking right now, believing they are getting natural cholesterol support. One of them is contaminated with a toxin that can damage your kidneys. The other has been linked to serious liver injury. Both are marketed as natural alternatives to medication. I will name both, explain why they are risky, and tell you what to do instead. So before you go anywhere, let us get into strategy number 1. And this is the foundation. This is the piece that changes how everything else works. Most people who try to lower their LDL start by cutting fat. Less fat in the diet, lower LDL in the blood. That is the assumption they carry around for years. And the problem is, it is only half right, and the wrong half. Here is the actual science. Not all fat raises LDL. Saturated fat does. Saturated fat, found in butter, coconut oil, full-fat dairy, fatty cuts of red meat, signals your liver to slow down LDL clearance. Specifically, it downregulates LDL receptors on liver cells. Fewer receptors means less LDL pulls from the bloodstream. The result is higher circulating LDL. But polyunsaturated fat, the kind found in salmon, walnuts, flax seeds, does the opposite. It upregulates those same receptors. Your liver clears more LDL and your numbers come down. A meta-analysis published in the American Journal of Clinical Nutrition looked at over 60 randomized controlled trials and found that replacing saturated fat with polyunsaturated fat, not with carbohydrates, specifically with polyunsaturated fat, produced the most significant LDL reduction. We are talking averages of 8 to 12%, sometimes more. Monounsaturated fat, olive oil, avocado, almonds, works through a slightly different mechanism, but the effect is similar. It supports HDL levels while helping manage LDL. Think of it as protecting both sides of the equation at once. So here is what you actually do. Replace butter with extra virgin olive oil. Use it for cooking, use it on bread, use it as your default fat. Add a daily handful of walnuts, about 30 grams, roughly a small closed fist. Get salmon or another fatty fish on your plate 2 to 3 times per week. Sardines and mackerel work just as well and cost significantly less. Add avocado regularly because the monounsaturated fat it contains actively supports a healthier cholesterol balance. You are not removing fat. You are upgrading it. That mental shift matters. Most patients who do this consistently for 6 to 8 weeks see measurable changes on their next panel. Not dramatic, not overnight, but real and documented. Now, strategy 2. And this one genuinely surprised me the first time I read the research. I had a patient a few years ago, very disciplined guy, had changed his diet significantly and was doing most things right. But his LDL barely moved over 3 months. We went through everything together, and eventually we got to his morning routine. He was drinking French press coffee every single morning. 2 large cups. Coffee contains a compound called caffeine. It is a natural oil present in coffee beans, and it has one very specific effect on your liver. It suppresses the receptors that clear LDL from your blood. Consistently, daily, silently. Studies comparing filtered and unfiltered coffee methods have found that unfiltered coffee, French press, Turkish coffee, espresso, boiled coffee, can raise LDL by up to 15 points compared to paper-filtered methods. Some studies suggest even higher in certain individuals, particularly those who are genetically slower caffeine metabolizers. 4 to 6 cups of French press daily over several months. Some researchers estimate the LDL impact can reach 25 points or more. That is not a rounding error. That is clinically meaningful territory. The fix is almost embarrassingly simple, and that is exactly what makes it so easy to overlook. Use a paper filter. That is the entire intervention. Paper filters trap caffeine before it ever reaches your cup. Drip coffee with the paper filter, pour over with the paper filter. Both are effectively caffeine-free. Your LDL does not see any meaningful signal from either of those brewing methods. If espresso or French press is genuinely non-negotiable for you, consider reducing frequency. Make it an occasional thing rather than your daily ritual. My patients switched to paper filtered drip, kept everything else the same. 8 weeks later, 9 points lower on LDL. One change, 0 cost. That is the kind of lever most people are walking past every single morning. Strategy 3. And I want to spend more time here because this mechanism is genuinely powerful. Soluble fiber. Your digestive system is far more involved in your cholesterol metabolism than most people realize. And the connection runs through something called bile acid recycling. Here is how it works. Your liver produces bile acids from cholesterol, and those bile acids travel into your gut to help digest fat. Normally, around 95% of those bile acids get reabsorbed in the lower intestine and recycled back to the liver. The process loops continuously. Soluble fiber interrupts that loop. When you eat soluble fiber, it absorbs water in your gut and forms a viscous gel. That gel physically binds to bile acids. Instead of being reabsorbed, those bile acids get trapped and excreted. Now your liver has a problem. It needs to make new bile acids to replace what was lost. So it pulls more cholesterol from your bloodstream to do it. And your circulating LDL drops. This is real, documented physiology. The FDA has approved a specific health claim for beta-glucan, the soluble fiber in oats, precisely because the evidence for LDL reduction is strong enough to meet their standard. That is a high bar. Most food-based health claims never get there. Research suggests that 7 to 10 grams of soluble fiber per day is the meaningful threshold. Below that, effects are modest. At that level and above, you start seeing reliable LDL reductions of 5 to 10% in many individuals. Here is your practical roadmap. Start with oats every morning. Rolled oats, not instant. 3 to 4 grams of soluble fiber per serving. Add 2 tablespoons of chia seeds, another 5 grams, and you can throw them into your oatmeal, your yogurt, or simply stir them into a glass of water. Beans and lentils are excellent additions to your main meals. Half a cup of cooked lentils delivers 2 to 3 grams of soluble fiber on top of good plant protein. Black beans, kidney beans, chickpeas, all of them work. Apples, pears, and citrus fruits also contribute meaningful amounts of soluble fiber and are easy to work into any daily routine. If you consistently struggle to hit 7 to 10 grams per day through food, and many people do, psyllium husk is a research-backed option. 1 teaspoon stirred into water once a day adds around 5 grams. Bland, inexpensive, and the clinical data behind it is solid. Quick question for you. Have you ever added psyllium husk to your routine? Write yes or no in the comments. I am genuinely curious how many people watching have already experimented with this. Strategy 4, and this is a natural extension of the fiber conversation. Plant protein. Multiple clinical trials have found that substituting animal protein, specifically red meat, with plant protein sources like nuts, seeds, and legumes produces a measurable reduction in LDL. Part of this is mechanical. When you eat nuts and seeds instead of meat, you are simultaneously increasing fiber and reducing saturated fat. But research suggests there is also a direct effect from plant proteins on how your liver handles LDL metabolism, separate from the fiber and fat changes. Soy protein in particular has been studied extensively, and the data is reasonably consistent. Even modest substitutions, 30 to 50 grams of plant protein daily, replacing the same amount of animal protein, have shown LDL reductions in the range of 4 to 8% in well-controlled trials. And this does not mean you need to go vegetarian. Not even close. It means that a few times each week, when you might otherwise reach for red meat, you choose a different protein source. A handful of almonds and a serving of black beans. Lentil soup instead of beef stew. Flax seeds stirred into your morning oatmeal alongside those chia seeds. These are small substitutions, but accumulated over weeks and months, they compound. Strategy 5. Physical activity and weight. I will be direct with you here. If you are carrying significant excess body weight, losing even 5 to 10% of your total body weight can produce meaningful improvements in LDL and overall lipid profile. This is not a background recommendation. It is foundational. Nothing in this video works as well if excess body weight is part of the picture and is not being addressed alongside these dietary changes. Beyond weight, exercise has a direct effect on cholesterol metabolism. Cardiovascular exercise, brisk walking, cycling, swimming, tends to raise HDL and can modestly reduce LDL. Resistance training improves insulin sensitivity and reduces triglycerides, both of which have downstream effects on LDL composition and overall cardiovascular risk. Here is something that often gets overlooked. The type of LDL particle matters, not just the total number. Small, dense LDL particles are more dangerous than large, buoyant ones. They penetrate arterial walls more easily and are more susceptible to oxidation. Think of it this way. A small, dense particle is like a sharp piece of gravel grinding through a pipe. A large, buoyant particle is more like a smooth ball that passes through without catching. Regular exercise shifts the distribution toward the safer, larger particles, even when total LDL stays roughly the same. Your doctor may not test for particle size routinely, but it is worth asking about if you want a complete picture of your cardiovascular risk profile. The clinical target is 150 minutes of moderate aerobic activity per week, plus 2 resistance training sessions. 30 minutes most days, and 2 days with weights. If you are not currently active at all, here is your minimum effective dose. 20 to 30 minutes of walking per day, and 2 basic strength sessions per week using body weight or light weights. That is enough to begin shifting your metabolic environment alongside the dietary changes we have covered. Start there. Build from there. Strategy 6. And this is the one most people have never connected to cholesterol. Probiotics and fermented foods. Your gut microbiome is capable of breaking down bile acids, the same bile acids involved in cholesterol recycling. Certain strains of bacteria produce enzymes called bile salt hydrolases. When they deconjugate bile acids in the gut, it reduces reabsorption, and your liver has to draw more cholesterol from the bloodstream to produce replacements. Same downstream effect as soluble fiber. Different mechanism, which means they work together and they compound each other. Fermented foods introduce and support beneficial bacterial populations. Miso, kimchi, sauerkraut, plain kefir. 1 to 2 servings per day supports the kind of gut environment that helps cholesterol metabolism over the long run. The research on specific probiotic strains for LDL reduction is still developing. But what is clear is this. Overall gut microbiome diversity correlates with better lipid profiles. And fermented whole foods are the most practical way to support that diversity for most people. A daily supplement capsule with a single strain is not remotely the same as building a diverse, food-supported microbiome over months. Think of this as building infrastructure, not getting a quick fix. A small bowl of miso soup with dinner, a tablespoon of kimchi alongside a meal, a cup of plain kefir in the morning. Small, easy, consistent habits that quietly support the bigger picture. Strategy 7. And I want to be careful here because the misinformation on this topic has been loud and persistent for decades. Eggs. For 30 or 40 years, eggs were treated as a cardiovascular threat. The logic seemed airtight. Eggs contain dietary cholesterol. Dietary cholesterol raises blood cholesterol. Therefore, eggs are dangerous. Simple, clear, wrong. Your liver is a dynamic system. When dietary cholesterol intake goes up, your liver compensates by producing less of its own. For most healthy adults, the net effect on blood LDL from eating 1 egg per day is quite small, much smaller than the effect of saturated fat in the same meal. Think about what you typically eat alongside an egg. Butter in the pan, processed breakfast meat, toast spread with butter. The egg is almost never the cholesterol story. It is everything surrounding it. Current evidence supports 1 egg per day as well tolerated for the majority of healthy individuals without meaningfully raising LDL. The nuance applies to people with familial hypercholesterolemia or type 2 diabetes. In those groups, the response to dietary cholesterol can be more pronounced, and the conversation with your physician matters more. If that is you, discuss it directly before drawing conclusions about egg intake. For everyone else, the egg is not your enemy. What you put next to it, that is often where the real cholesterol story lives. Now I need to stop here, because we have covered 7 solid strategies, and I want to be honest with you about something important. For some of you, I would estimate roughly half, there is a pattern that will silently undermine everything we have just discussed. And it involves 2 specific supplements that are very widely used right now. Pay close attention here. The first one is red yeast rice. Red yeast rice has become enormously popular in the natural health space because, let us be honest, it does lower LDL. It works because it contains a compound called monocolin K, which is chemically identical to lovastatin, a prescription statin drug. When you take red yeast rice, you are essentially taking an unregulated statin. Here is the serious problem. The fermentation process used to make red yeast rice can produce a contaminant called citrinin, a mycotoxin with documented kidney toxicity. Testing of commercial red yeast rice products has consistently found citrinin contamination in a significant proportion of products on the market. The contamination levels vary unpredictably from batch to batch and from brand to brand. There is no regulatory oversight ensuring a consistent dose. There is no guaranteed purity standard. You are taking a statin-equivalent compound with none of the safety controls that apply to prescription medications. And here is the real irony. People turn to red yeast rice precisely because they want to avoid the perceived risk of pharmaceutical statins. But without standardized manufacturing, they are actually taking on more uncertainty, not less. You do not know what dose you are getting. You do not know whether the batch in your cabinet is contaminated. If your LDL is high enough to require statin-level intervention, have that conversation with your doctor about an actual prescription statin. Controlled dose, regulated manufacturing, documented safety profile. That is the more responsible choice, not the less natural one. The second supplement is concentrated green tea extract in capsule form. Drinking green tea is genuinely beneficial. 3 to 4 cups a day has solid evidence behind it and carries no meaningful risk for most people. The polyphenols in green tea, particularly EGCG, have shown modest positive effects on LDL in multiple studies. Green tea as a beverage is something I recommend freely. Capsule supplements containing concentrated green tea extract are a completely different matter. There are documented cases of serious liver injury, some requiring liver transplants, associated with high-dose green tea extract supplements. Both the FDA and the European Food Safety Authority have flagged this issue specifically. The cases are not common, but they are real, they are documented, and they are serious enough that regulatory agencies have issued formal public warnings. The problem appears to be dose concentration. A cup of green tea delivers a certain amount of EGCG naturally, diluted through the preparation process. A capsule delivering the equivalent of 40 or 50 cups can overwhelm the liver's processing capacity in susceptible individuals. And the difficulty is that you often cannot predict in advance who those susceptible individuals are. Drink the tea, enjoy it freely, but be cautious about concentrated capsule extracts, particularly at the higher doses marketed for weight loss and cholesterol support. Natural and safe are not the same thing. That distinction matters enormously when we are talking about organ damage. So here is where I want to leave you. The research is consistent on one thing. Isolated nutrient strategies produce modest, inconsistent results. What produces lasting, meaningful LDL reduction is a coherent dietary pattern, where multiple mechanisms work simultaneously, not in isolation. The Mediterranean diet and the DASH diet both outperform targeted supplement approaches in long-term trials. Why? Because they combine the fat quality upgrade, the fiber load, the plant protein shift, and the reduced processed food intake all at once. You are not managing one variable. You are changing the entire environment your liver operates in. Think about what happens when you stack these strategies together. You switch to olive oil. LDL receptors become more active. You add oats and chia seeds every morning. Bile acids stop recycling as efficiently. You add salmon twice a week. Polyunsaturated fat pushes LDL clearance further. You switch from French press to filtered coffee. You eliminate a hidden daily driver of LDL elevation. You add a daily handful of walnuts. Plant protein and fiber working in parallel. You add kefir and kimchi. Your gut microbiome starts supporting cholesterol metabolism instead of ignoring it. None of these changes alone is revolutionary, but all of them together, that is when you start seeing the 20 and 30-point drops that make doctors ask what you have been doing. In practical terms, this looks like olive oil as your default fat, fish twice a week, a daily handful of nuts, abundant vegetables and legumes, oats or other high-fiber grains in the morning, limited red and processed meat, paper-filtered coffee, consistent physical activity, and fermented foods worked in daily. Build from there, one sustainable habit at a time. And here is something I want to say directly, because I think it genuinely matters. The patients I have seen make the most meaningful, lasting improvements in their LDL numbers were not the ones who did everything perfectly. They were not the ones who never had a burger or a glass of wine. They were the ones who made the right changes consistently, week after week, month after month, and kept going even when progress felt slow. Because cholesterol is not a sprint. It is a reflection of your habits over time. And your habits over the next 90 days will show up clearly in your next blood panel. If this breakdown was useful, a quick like helps more people find evidence-based information when they are searching for answers on cholesterol. Most of what people find when they search this topic is selling them something. I want to be the exception to that. And if you want to go deeper on how to structure your meals around these principles, how to put the Mediterranean approach into a practical weekly plan, I covered that in detail in another video. Link is in the description. Consistency beats perfection. Every single time. I will see you in the next one.